The Cubs sweep the Sox, make a statement in the Crosstown series. We'll preview the upcoming series against the Marlins, wax poetic about Pete Crow-Armstrong, and more today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Cubs win 6-2 today. Colin Rea good again. He goes 5 1/3, 1 earned run, ERA down to 2.38 on the season. I was talking to a coach the other day about the Cubs pitching staff and their success this season, especially given how much four-seam fastball they are throwing relative to the league. And I often find that asking people about other orgs as opposed to their own leads to more opinionated responses, which then enlightens me in various directions. And that individual told me to look at team pitching staffs and their zone rate before they get to two strikes. Now, I mentioned this briefly on yesterday's podcast, but the Cubs lead Major League Baseball in pre-two-strike zone rate at a 56.7% clip entering today, about 4 percentage points higher than the average. Another way to put this, they do a very good job getting to two strikes, challenging hitters, which allows them to then set up a bunch of good stuff off the plate for chase. Pretty fundamental concept in baseball, but often one that is not executed to this level by an entire staff. And Colin Rea is one of these guys. He was running over a 70% first pitch strike rate entering the game, slightly down today, but still an overall productive outing. He's in the top quarter of the league in pre-two strike zone rate. This number that I'm probably going to bring up more often and hopefully maybe ask Casey Jacobson, assistant pitching coach, Tommy Hotovy, and some other people about to give some color on it, because I do think it epitomizes why the Cubs pitching staff has been so good this season. Pete Crow-Armstrong can't be stopped, no surprise. 1-1 game entering the bottom of the sixth. Pete doubles with Bruján on second. You end up with a close play at the plate. I think Bruján was going to hold if that throw was going to home and was cut off. PCA now with a 290, 325, 585 slug. That's his line on the season after today. That's 50% better than the league average hitter. Comparable production to guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Jose Ramirez this season. Crazy for me to think about that level of excellence for him, given that entering the season, we were all kind of just hoping for around league average offensive production with stellar defense and speed, and he has far and away exceeded those expectations. Just an unbelievable run for him to start the year. Let's get the pipes rolling on some Pete starting in center field for the National League in the All-Star game, because that feels like an absolute lock right now. Later in that inning, you had a Seiya Suzuki sac fly and a Michael Busch RBI knock. The Cubs would exit the bottom of the sixth 4-1 and tack on two more in the seventh and eighth innings. Bullpen looked strong, closing things out. On yesterday's podcast, we talked about potentially Matt Shaw coming back up, and now that looks pretty fantastic, as it seems like in post-game clubhouse in the Cubs clubhouse, Nicky Lopez was shaking hands with teammates. Craig Counsell in his post-game press conference said it's under consideration for sure as to whether Matt Shaw would be called up. So as you're listening to this, probably not official yet until sometimes Monday, but it seems like Matt Shaw's coming up to join the team in Miami, with Nicky Lopez being the corresponding move there, likely some kind of DFA. We'll see if he stays inside the organization. But this is another look at Matt Shaw, who's made some subtle adjustments down at AAA. The leg kick, as you'll notice when you see him, is a bit shorter. He's covering balls over the middle of the plate. And I'd argue to some extent he gets a soft landing against the Marlins staff that looks pretty good overall. The lefty Ryan Weathers throwing on Tuesday, he'll likely start against. The Cubs looking for some kind of small boost on the offensive side, specifically from third base, so they turn to the prospect that won the job out of spring and now gets another taste of Major League pitching, which he will eventually have to adjust to. And speaking of prospects, Cole Wright, Ryan Dempster, and myself caught up with Cade Horton on the field during our pregame show, which we had outside. Awesome stuff. As always, the vibes are always fantastic on the field. And here are a few nuggets from that interview with Cade before we preview the Marlins series. Demp is going to start us off with a question.
One thing you've been doing a really good job of is just attacking, right? And like letting the results play out. Pitching in the game here in these elements, it's a lot different, right? When the wind blowing out like that, yet you kept that bulldog mentality. How much do you let elements affect you versus just going out there and trusting your stuff like you did?
Yeah, I mean, being from Oklahoma, the wind's nothing new, and so just trying to attack the zone. The last thing you want to do with wind conditions like that is put guys on, walk guys. That's when you get the bloop single, then you get the double, and things just kind of crumble from there. So just trying to limit traffic on the bases is the big key in that.
Cade, first off, thanks a ton for joining us on Road to Wrigley Live. You were a first live ever guest, and it was a blast. We enjoyed talking to you. One of the things I want you to drill on is last year, your velo dipped down relative to 2023. And I believe this spring, it seems like you really tweaked some mechanical things to get you back to looking like 2023. I remember talking to your old pitching coach, AAA, TC, and he was like, Cade is 2023 Cade. What is the difference between 2024 Cade and 2025 Cade?
Yeah, I think, my arm just kind of got weak over the offseason. I kind of got stagnant and became robotical, I think, this year. I did a lot of shoulder strength stuff in the off season, so that helped a lot. And then just getting back to my athletic self, moving down the mound well, things like that. And so, yeah, that was the biggest part, is just becoming an athlete again, and moving like I do.
You added a sinker too. That curveball is relatively new each of the last couple of years. You've kind of tinkered and added a pitch, the changeup. Are you surprised at how depth your mix is now? How much more you have relative to college when you were primarily fastball slider?
Yeah, for sure. But at this level, you need those weapons. And so, yeah, that sinker's it's still got a lot of room for improvement, but it's gonna be a good pitch for me just to get righties, have something go hard into them, and then that opens up a way.
First impressions so far of the Cubs-White Sox rivalry
series. It was electric. The atmosphere was awesome. I think we had a fight in the stands yesterday, but
standard,
But no, it's been super cool to just experience this, and so yeah.
Good to know that a fight in the stand sparks the energy for players as much as it does for everybody on social media who always loves reacting to those things. But anyways, let's get on to the Marlins. Marlins-Cubs for 3 games here starting on Monday. Cubs are getting Edward Cabrera, Ryan Weathers again, and Max Meyer. Cabrera has a 5.52 ERA. He's starting on Monday. Meyer with a 4.47. Weathers' first start off the injured list was last Wednesday against the Cubs, and he mowed them down. He added a couple ticks from last year, stuff uptick. We'll see him again. I always find that interesting. This happened with Paul Skeens when he debuted last year. He caught the Cubs 2 times in a row and was not amazing in the first start, much better in the second. Weathers good in the first, so hopefully he flips the Skeens script and struggles a bit on Tuesday in that matchup. Edward Cabrera is throwing a bunch of sliders this year, not getting as much whiff. He's been a rocky guy this season, and the Cubs aren't a team that's really prone to chase, so I don't know. This might be a rough outing for Cabrera overall. He's a guy that I brought up in the past as being a potential target of the Cubs. Marlins are kind of in I think it's probably a 2 to 3 year rebuild here, and Cabrera has a couple years of control. Kind of an interesting pitcher that's just never been able to get it in zone enough to be able to set up his nasty stuff, which you will visually see tomorrow. He has plus stuff. His ball moves a ton. He's just constantly out of the zone, so a lot of the times guys just spit on pitches. Meyer made a bunch of changes this offseason. He started hot. He had a huge 14 strikeout game against the Reds at home. He's throwing more sinker instead of his 4-seamer. That gets to a larger point that the Marlins are throwing the lowest number of 4-seam fastballs in Major League Baseball this season, contrasting with the Cubs, who throw the most 4-seam fastball this season. And they're actually tracking, the Marlins are, for the lowest combined 4-seam and sinker usage in probably MLB history, or at least as far as we can go back, which is to 2015. I kind of would doubt that prior to that window there was a team that threw this few fastballs, given the tendency of the league now to push towards non-fastballs. The Cubs offense, however, very good, productive versus all shapes, so not particularly worried about this matchup, as we were not worried when the Marlins faced the Cubs at Wrigley Field. 5:40 first pitch tomorrow in Miami means a 4:30 p.m. Central Time pregame show on Marquee Sports Network and the Marquee Sports Network app. It's Ben Brown versus Edward Cabrera, which I already kind of broke down, but Ben Brown watching for the new kick changeup here. So this is a pitch that we talked about a bit on prior episodes in regards to Jameson Taillon. Basically, it's a way to get more drop on a changeup, make that pitch a bit more effective for guys who maybe struggle slightly with getting swing and a miss versus left-handed hitters. With Ben Brown, however, he's been really good versus left-handed hitters in terms of generating swing and miss. So it's not like the kick changeup, this alteration on the pitch, is too necessary. But as we saw with Taillon, it took him some time to get comfortable with that offering, and then he eventually started ripping it, and it's been fantastic. I wonder whether this is a start now, especially as you get guys like Kyle Stowers who crushed the Cubs at Wrigley Field, whether Brown is more comfortable using that offering. So I'll keep an eye on his changeup usage as always. Until then, take care. Thanks as always for listening to the Cubs Daily Podcast. Feel free to rate, review, subscribe on wherever you are listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.